Welcome, everybody, to the Digital Teaching and Learning webinar. I am so glad that Colby is in the chat and reminded me to press record. Okay, so this resource, I will link on the Canvas page as well, but I just made a portfolio on Adobe Express. And our focus this month is on digital citizen advocate. So the standard is that coaches will model digital citizenship and support educators and students in recognizing the responsibilities and opportunities inherent in living in a digital world, which is kind of a big ask because there's a lot that fits under digital citizenship. So below the standard here are the 4 substandards, and I've kind of bolded the main point of each of those. But if in the chat you could share what number you'd like, hold on, I wrote it down. Put in the chat, looking at the standards, which one or which ones, you can choose multiple, do you see as the biggest need for your schools? So 1 says use technology for civic engagement and address challenges to improve their communities. 2 is fostering a culture of respectful online interactions and a healthy balance in their use of technology. 3 is supporting educators and students to critically examine sources of online media. And then 4 is empower people to make informed decisions to protect their personal data and curate a digital profile, like their digital footprint. So just in the chat, share 1, 2, 3, or 4. What do you see as the biggest need for your schools and your students? Okay, so we have 2 and 4, 2. Okay, so out of and of course all of them are important, but it's looking like 4 might be the winner, with 2 coming in second place. Those of you who shared in the chat, why, which one did you choose, and why do you think that is a need today?
I will go. I think when you said culture of respectful online interactions, I think that's what spurred me. Maybe healthy balance of technology. Obviously, that's a big one for anybody, but this healthy dialogue is just, it's out of control. It's not.
It's not.
It's not fun.
I was gonna say, I picked 2 along the similar lines of Larissa. I'm at a virtual school, so that's why I have 1 and 2 is part of the focus. Yeah. But helping the kids understand the use of technology for civic engagement, and also having those correct interactions online, because all they do is interact online. Yeah. They rarely have in-person, face-to-face interactions. So teaching them that there's somebody else behind the screen is really vital for a successful collaboration in my classroom.
Yes, and I think it's so huge as an adult, as well, right? When you're engaging in these online forums, there's a person at the end of that computer screen, and you can't just get away with, calling them names and raging at people online. Anyone who chose 4, do you want to share your thoughts on that one?
I can go. I just think you were saying digital footprint, and I feel like that's way important for our students to know what they're doing is out there, man. And so making informed decisions, and then protecting their personal data. I feel like there is digital citizenship going on in elementary school, and I know in middle school and high school for sure, but I feel like there should be more of it.
I agree. And like you said, your digital footprint, that's forever. Whatever you put out onto the internet is a permanent reflection of who they were at that moment in time. And some of it might not be very flattering, right? Melinda, I thought I saw a little bit of a hand, but.
Yes. One of the things that we dabble with in my class is cybersecurity, and it's been very interesting. This year, one of the things that my students have been extremely interested in is the districts, how often they are looking at their profiles now that they know where to look, what services the district is using, and how it's accessing their student data. I fielded a question on Monday about what systems used Amazon Web Services versus other services, and why they needed to check their account at the frequency it was being checked. But what I love about it is that they're applying, they're really applying they're applying the knowledge that they've learned to their own profiles, and realizing how not private everything they do is. And until they were able to actually see that, you didn't see it. The other little gold star for my kids is that, I don't know how many of you take the CT test through the state of Utah, through the precision exams, but my kids found a data breach in their form, and we're able to help them get that fixed. So I think that knowledge is power. And so I think instead of being afraid of the kids knowing more about it actually, they've been more interested in their personal data than I've ever seen. And it's all because they're looking.
Yes. And I love that. I think it's a good segue into like talking about digital citizenship. It's like this isn't going to go away, right? And just like ignoring it isn't going to make it any better. And digital citizenship, the phrase is a kind of a mouthful, but really these skills, kind of like what Krista said earlier, they're skills that we want to transfer into real life, into the workplace, and I want to see it transfer into their the ways they act as a citizen in normal life, right? Like it's not just digital citizenship, it's like the behaviors and mindsets that we want any like active engaged citizen to engage in. So like I said, it's a lot to ask, but I think by having these conversations with our students, by giving them access to this information, it just makes them more informed and better, more capable of making these important decisions. So later, as we go through today's webinar, I want you to be thinking of how you can use not just our district tools, but that is the focus of our webinar today. Be thinking of the one that you focused on earlier, the one you put in the chat. How could you use these tools to specifically address those problems that you're seeing? And how you can help your teachers in your school also like start to incorporate it. Because I love digital citizenship, I love talking about it, but I know that but not handled the right way, teachers will see it as just another thing. And that's not the case, right? Like this is just patterns of behavior when you're like engaging in online spheres or when you're engaging with digital media. So it doesn't have to be just another thing. It can just be the thing, right? It's just the way that we talk about our online world. So my little statement there is digital citizenship is essential skills that should be embedded throughout every content area and curriculum. And kind of like what Tracy said, it's not just like a once a year assembly. It's not just like a week in the fall where it's like it's digital citizenship week, but rather it's like every day, every time we open up a screen, we're thinking about these skills, we're thinking about these patterns of behavior, and we're becoming better citizens in general. So the first resource that I wanted to show you, and I don't know why it's looking like that, but is KQED Teach. So I am going to focus on the district tools, but I did want to show you guys this one thing, first of all, just because teachers can find digital literacy and digital citizenship kind of intimidating if they aren't very familiar with it. And KQED is a resource. They are the NPR affiliate in the Bay Area, and they've created this catalog of courses all about digital media. And excuse me, they serve as a great segue into digital citizenship conversations with your students, because they have courses on how to make digital media, but then also how to analyze digital media. So you'll notice some of the courses here, like analyzing media messages, how to address like bias, motivation, production choices, evaluating online sources, addressing misinformation. But then they also have like how to use audio to inspire learning. So if you have a teacher who's like, I'd like to try like a podcast in my classroom or a radio show or, you know, X, Y, and Z, I don't know where to start. This course is a great way to kind of get them familiar with how to use those tools and how to use them in the classroom. Likewise, like making infographics, making photo essays, making video, understanding copyright. So a handful of courses that are all kind of around this area of digital media, digital literacy, digital citizenship, and kind of how they all overlap. So that's kind of where I would point to my teachers if they were like, I don't even know where to get started. That's the place to get started. So these courses from KQED Teach give teachers hands-on experience in both creating digital media and analyzing it with their students so that they can start having these conversations about digital citizenship and what it means for them in their classes. So we have our big six, 6.5, 6, 7, and we'll go through each of these and some of the resources that I curated, specifically with digital citizenship in mind. And if you have any questions, like please put it in the chat or hop on the microphone, because I'd love to address those questions that you have as we go through. So how might we incorporate conversations around digital literacy and digital citizenship with the tools that we have? And be thinking, how can we address these standards with the tools that you use every day? So digital citizenship with Canvas, some of the resources that I curated specifically kind of around that mindset of how do we engage with others online. So this first resource is from ISTE, 3 Strategies for Better Online Discussions, because I found like that's one of the coolest things about Canvas is that you can have these like class discussions, but sometimes they fall into a rut and they're not as productive or helpful as you would hope. So I found this article was helpful in kind of elaborating on making those better. In the Canvas Commons, how to leave feedback comments for student submissions. They also gave a link to a survey on like how students engage with media in Canvas. So this is kind of like a getting to know you survey. But what I thought was interesting was they're asking them like what's their preferences on like how do you prefer to be engaged with? Is it email, text, phone? But then also like feedback. I may leave feedback in video format. Does that work for you? Or do you prefer audio or do you prefer text? Like giving students the options with how they engage is one like honors their like participation and their engagement, but then also gives them more variety and what you can give them feedback on. So this link to the Canvas Commons says how to leave feedback in video and audio format. And one thing I thought was really interesting about that was the audio. It goes back to what Krista was saying, like it's a person behind the screen. And the more, especially like in virtual situations, the more real you can make that person, the more likely they are to engage with the material, right? And I'm not telling you anything that you don't know already. But for someone who's like, I want something a little bit more in Canvas, leaving video or audio comments might be an interesting segue for them. And then this last resource specifically with Canvas is from TCEA. It's like the USET of Texas, even though it's way bigger in Texas than it is in Utah, but that's what it is. It's USET for Texas. They have these icebreakers that shatter, like they're cool, they really work. And I thought some of them were really cool. So that's why I wanted to share it with you, especially if you're like in an online world and you need something to like build that sense of community. even though you're virtual. These also can be used in a physical environment. So there's a whole bunch that I was like, oh, this is really cool. So some options for you and building community in Canvas. Okay, digital citizenship with Google Workspace. 2 resources from Google. The first one is Applied Digital Skills. They have a whole bunch of lessons on how to use like all of Google Workspace. So you can specifically like give them skills with any of the Google apps. But these ones that I linked to specifically are about online safety and digital well-being. And what I like about the Applied Digital Skills, GEG Utah is a teacher group that focuses on Google. They share out a lot of these often in their daily resource shares. But for teachers who may not be in that group, this could be a good resource for them. What I like about Applied Digital Skills is they do a really good job of kind of overlapping and like app smashing. It's like, oh, we start here, like say in slides, but then we incorporate docs or other like Google tools. So it's nice to see those skills build on each other. So if we click on that link, video lessons on how to engage students in learning safely online. So you can see these: create a responsible blog with Google Sites, evaluate credibility of online sources. So just some quick lessons that build healthy habits online. There are tons of other topics. You can see all the different collections, but this is the one that I shared, was the online safety one. And then this Be Internet Awesome is an interactive game and curriculum for educators. It is from Google, and it's this place called Interland. It's geared obviously more towards elementary, but they can go into these different spaces and practice like healthy digital habits. So it's like gamification, but then also play your way to Internet Awesome. And then they also have a curriculum that pairs well with the game. I could not think of the word for that. Okay, Nearpod, I kind of struggled with, I'm not gonna lie. The biggest thing and the most awesome thing is Nearpod has a whole curriculum of digital citizenship lessons built into Nearpod already. But students don't necessarily use Nearpod. They don't create stuff themselves. The teachers just use Nearpod to like give lessons to the students. So I didn't really have so much like student facing things, like student created things. But again, if you, oh gosh, I have to sign in. 1 second. You can see all the digital citizenship and literacy lessons. You can sort by age group. You can also search by. They have activities, and let me click on this. So they are made in conjunction with Common Sense Media. So their lessons, so the big data dilemma, protecting online reputations. You can see like all these topics fit in nicely with this digital citizenship standard that we're working with. So, so another resource with Nearpod. And then these next 2 resources are definitely more creation focused. So like my mantra is always like, I want my students to be creators, not just consumers. So with digital citizenship with Adobe Express, the focus is on how can they use these tools to engage in digital citizenship with things that they've created. So they have a course from Adobe called Cultivating Digital Literacy, which is a great resource for teachers. So this is just like in general, like what is digital literacy and how can they incorporate it more in their teaching. And then they also have in the edX website these different like mini lessons through specifically with Adobe Express. So like how to build community with Adobe Express, goal setting, writing activities, visible thinking routines, formative assessment, infographics. They're all of these are about 30 minutes long. So they're short, they're quick, and they all focus on Adobe Express, which everybody has access to from elementary through secondary. And again, kind of gets at that standard of how do we like use these tools to engage in like civic problems, but also like build community with one another. And you know, keeping in mind our digital footprint and like the profile that we want to curate, like that is a very active thing that we want our students to do. It's not passive. And so if you just allow like, in the absence of a story, people will make up their own. And so if you want to talk to your students about, okay, what is your story? What will people get about you? And if you're not sharing things, good things, then people will make up their own version, and that may or may not be flattering to you or to future employers or, you know, XYZ. So that can be a conversation starter. Likewise, digital citizenship with Canva. Again, the focus on being creators, not just consumers. And this link that I've shared is Teach with Canva tutorials. Especially for a teacher that may be new to Canva, I found these were super interesting. There's like design infographic activities, design video activity, comic strip activity. So like specific types of things that they can create. Support emotional learning, building class relationships. So again, there's these kind of short informational tutorials on how to use Canva to do different things, with the ultimate goal of having our students create and share good stuff with a purpose, not just things that look pretty. Okay, Mastery Connects. So this one I also thought was kind of interesting because we use Mastery Connect as like an assessment tool. And this kind of gets at the standard of like using our data and curating a profile. So these two resources, this is the state of assessment in K-12 education. This just talks about, this is from Instructure, their blog. Let's see that it will go. So it basically says that like high stakes assessments aren't super helpful, but that formative and like interim assessments are more helpful for teachers and for students. And we can use Mastery Connect for that like formative assessment, and you can use that data to inform your instruction, design interventions, evaluate efficacy. But the next thing I wanted to show you with that learning mastery is another resource from KQED, making students partners in data-driven approaches to learning. So it's not just collecting data on students, but also turning it over to the students and having them make goals with their data and kind of assess their own learning and tracking it and saying like, oh, I am totally getting this, or like I am struggling in this area. Like the more we allow students to control their data and like to see it in like real time, will help them just make better decisions about their own learning, but then also like to feel more empowered about their learning as well. And you can use Mastery Connect to do that. Am I saying that right? Mastery Connect? For some reason I'm having, okay, it is Mastery Connect. Okay. For some reason I was like, it doesn't sound accurate. And so this is another reason why I was like getting the number wrong with our digital tools. UJA is new this year. So these two resources, one is like the video editor overview. If you tried using UJA, this one kind of breaks down like how to use the different tools. And then this last resource I'm going to share with you is a Media Lit Kit. They're key questions for media literacy. So UJA is a video creation tool. Teachers can use it to create screencasts and videos for instruction, but students can also use it to create videos. And whenever you create something, it's also worth being able to analyze it and critique that thing that you've created, because you've made choices. You've made critical like points with that thing that you've created, and so it's worth saying like, oh, why did we make this production choice? What does it mean? Like, how does it get to our audience? Because if they say, I don't know, then they haven't really like created something of value probably. Okay, so Krista, you asked if students can create with UJA. It was my assumption that they could. Colby, and
so like they have the account and log in.
They should.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they just access it through the Google waffle. Access it. Yeah, they won't if they're on Chromebooks, they won't be able to download the like desktop version, but they can still do the browser version.
And then they can just share the link for like turning in presentations and such.
I think so.
Thank you, Colby, for answering that question. It's hard because like I didn't get to use it with students, and so there's a lot of these like questions that I'm like, oh, I think so, but
we tried it the other day, and my students were able to use it, and it worked just fine. They were able to install because they weren't on Chromebooks, but it seemed to work just fine. And with what we got from you guys, it went really well, and the kids didn't really need much help. So I would call it a success.
Oh, good. Thank you, Melinda. That's awesome. That's good to hear success stories. So this PDF rather is like 5 key questions. And this is one of the things I thought could be used with any content area. Anything where you're creating digital media, these are questions to ask your students about it. So not just stuff that you're creating, but stuff that you're analyzing, right? So think about a commercial, a political cartoon, TikTok. Who created this message? What techniques did they use to get your attention? How might different people understand this message differently, right? Getting at that kind of perspective taking. What values, points of view are represented and what are omitted from this message? And then why was this message being sent? So asking those questions about anything that you interact with online is a kind of good way at digging down into kind of like the creator's purpose, but then also like how do audiences interpret things. Some core concepts to be reiterated is that all media messages are constructed. They have a creator who has a point of view, who has biases. Same thing with like audiences, they have a point of view and biases. Media messages are constructed using creative language. So depending on the format you're using, like if you're creating a video, like a scene, a cut, edits, like all of these kind of have formal language attached to them. If you're doing something with graphic design, like color theory, shape and font, like all of these have rules that they need to be aware of as they are creating things. Different people experience the same message differently. Media have embedded values and points of view, and most media messages are organized to gain profit and or power, which I think is an interesting question when you're having them analyze like memes or they're looking at like viral social media stuff, right? It's like, yes, this is funny and this is popular, but it also has messages that we need to be aware of. And so the rest of this PowerPoint just kind of delves more deeply into each of those questions and concepts with media, as well as some like other guiding questions. So I thought it would be useful, especially when we're talking about creating digital media and using that to explore digital citizenship, that they should be able to analyze those messages as well. So all of these resources and more are going to be shared throughout the month on our digital teaching and learning Twitter account. Every day we share something that has to do with digital citizenship for April specifically. But I've also linked in this page to the resources Wakelet. So you'll see what's being shared out throughout the month. But I've organized them according to standard. So civic engagement resources, culture of respectful online interactions, healthy balance, and throughout the rest as well. Okay, well, thank you guys for being here today. I appreciate it. I loved our discussion, and I can't wait to see what you guys do. So thank you.